You're listening to Your Highest Self podcast, episode 61. Today, we're talking about overcoming the fear of not being accepted. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm so excited. I've already lost my voice. I'm so excited to see you here. I'm not going to repress record. We're just going to go on with it. If you are a returning loyal listener, welcome back. Missed you. I did not do a podcast episode last week. I needed a little break. And if you are brand new, welcome. So excited to have you here. My name is Chanee. I'm your host. I'm a former WBFF bikini pro and fitness and nutrition coach turned master life coach. My passion and obsession is helping you on your journey to your highest self. So this is a personal development podcast where I help you go from a self-conscious nobody to the self-confident leader in your life and business. We're going to have a great conversation today about overcoming the fear of not being accepted. And as I was doing the show notes for this episode, I was really thinking about when was my first experience with this? And we're going to get into why that's important. But so for me, I'll never forget the time my kindergarten teacher looked at me and said, "Chanee, not everyone is going to like you." Because I was desperately trying to get one of the students in class to like me. And I was the new kid and I came in halfway through the year. And at that moment, my 6-year-old brain registered that as it's my job to make everyone like me. And thus began the conditioning process of making sure I was always accepted. So this is a core wound and it shows up in everything, right? Because how we do one thing is how we do everything. And it can really greatly impact us living to our full potential. So today I'm addressing this fear of not being accepted and how we can work to heal and grow from it. So tune in today and we're going to talk about why this conditioning is detrimental to our self-growth, how this shows up in our life and business, and our ability to be seen, healing this core wound, and then 3 steps to overcoming the fear of not being accepted and showing up as your authentic self. Super excited. Before we get into the content of today's episode, I just want to take a moment to invite you into Mindset Makeover, which is my monthly mindset membership program where we take everything that we learn on this podcast and we put it into action. This month, we've been diving into purpose and passions, and it's been amazing. And when you join, you do get access to all the previous months of content, all for $97 a month. And I can honestly say that is such an amazing value. So let me know if you want to join, or just go down to the show notes and you'll see the link there. Other than that, just want to say that I'm thinking of you all if you've been affected by the fires, or gosh, there's just so much going on this year, right? It's been one thing after the other. So I just want to send a special healing thought your way and just let you all know that I'm thinking of you, and I hope everyone is doing well. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's first start off by talking about why this conditioning is detrimental to our self-growth. So I was telling you, my very first experience was that in kindergarten, and what I took away from it is it's my job to make everyone like me. And you may have a similar thought, you may have had a similar experience, or maybe it was with your parent or an aunt or someone at church. Whatever it is, it doesn't super matter what the exact root of the problem is, or I'm sorry, it doesn't matter what the exact memory or experience was. That's not important to know when the first time was, but it is important to know a time so that we can kind of reflect on it and see if this is a belief that is worth keeping. Before we get into it, I'm getting ahead of myself. Why is it detrimental to our self-growth? So a lot of times when we have the fear of not being accepted, it can show up in our lives as people pleasing, lack of boundaries, and codependency. And these three things, what happens, and you might even have like a menagerie of all of them, it takes us farther and farther away from our true and authentic self. If we are people pleasing, then we're not able to be our authentic selves. We're not able to speak up for ourselves. We're not able to do the actions that are in line with our highest good. And instead, we bend over backwards and overcompensate. If we have a lack of boundaries, we may be really, really low on our self-care tank. We may not be able to say no to people, and we say yes to everybody else but no to ourselves. And codependency, we all know how that can show up in our lives, and not even codependency with like a boyfriend girlfriend relationship, but codependency with your family. That can become a very toxic situation. So the fear of not being accepted either by friends or family or the strangers on the internet, if you kind of struggle with any of these three, then you may have this core wound, this fear. And when we allow this fear to dictate the actions in our lives, we don't grow. We don't stick up for ourselves. We don't advocate for ourselves. We don't show up for ourselves. And you'll find that a lot of the little self-sabotaging behaviors that you do most often stem from this. I mean, this is a very, very common core wound that I see in many of my clients and a lot of my friends, a lot of my family, because as humans, we naturally want to feel accepted, seen, and heard. Like that's all we really want in life, and so it's a very common core wound. If you have it, you're not broken. Welcome to just being a human. And that's, why I wanted to do this podcast, just give you a couple tools to be able to identify when you are operating from this place of fear of, oh man, like what if they don't like me? Or what if I'm not accepted? What if I'm not good enough? And instead move to thoughts of love, of I'm doing this for myself because I love myself and I accept myself and this is my true authentic self. And being able to have the courage to be yourself, to hold those boundaries, to not people please from a place of love and not from a place of like reactivity or lashing out at others. So a couple ways that this can show up in our lives, and specifically for a business, the fear of not being accepted, what it does is it impacts your ability to be seen. And what I mean by that is you want to help people. You want to coach, you want to help this, woman or this man or these people who've gone through the same exact things that you have, but you don't allow yourself to be seen fully, meaning you are putting out a vanilla or watered down version of yourself out there on the internet. You might notice that it's comes up for you when you're creating content where like, oh, like I really want to say that, but what if someone thinks that's offensive? Or what if I hurt someone's feelings? Or like, what if that puts off some people? Another thing that you might realize is that it's exhausting to be posturing all the time. Like it's so exhausting to constantly being like hyper worried and monitoring what you're posting. Is this quote good? Is it not good? Is it going to offend someone? It's not fun. And if you constantly show up in your business in this energy that's not fun, it's not going to get you anywhere. And you are not going to attract your ideal client, the woman that you are meant to help, because you're putting out this like really watered down version of yourself out there. So I wanted to give you an example for myself. This podcast was a dream for years. I mean, years. I'm talking like 3+ years. I was like, I really want to have a podcast. I really want to have a podcast. And what held me back from putting it out there? So I wanted to do it for years. And then in 2019, when we launched, I had bought a mic in January. And I kept saying, oh, like when I have time, I'll sit down and record when I have time. And I recorded an episode or two, maybe in like March, and then, never did anything about it. And I kept finding excuses, right? It's like, oh, I don't have a podcast cover. I don't have a good name for it. I don't know what the title of the show is going to be. And I kept finding all these excuses. When I finally like sat down to examine myself, I realized that the reason why I was sabotaging myself, the reason why I wasn't putting it out there when this was like the thing I wanted to do, it's because I was worried that people wouldn't accept me. Putting myself out there on a new platform in a different way, right? Everyone is just used to reading my Instagram posts and hearing me talk on stories, but who's actually going to want to sit down and plug in their headphones and listen to me talk for 20 or 30 minutes? Who am I to do that? And if I do that, what if they don't like me? What if no one listens to the podcast? What if I have 0 listeners, right? So all these fear thoughts come in from that core wound of, I'm afraid I'm not going to be accepted. And that's how this impacts our ability to be seen, our ability for us to show up so that people can find us. And my intentions behind the podcast were always pure, right? Like, I'm here to help, I'm here to be of service, I am here to help you on your journey. I'm not doing it for me, but I was making it about me. I was making it mean something about me if someone didn't like the podcast. So that's examples in business. Let's go into life. A couple ways that this can show up in your life, if you are just like your general life, is feeling unfulfilled, feeling inauthentic, and feeling like nobody gets you. This is because you're not truly showing up as your authentic self. So feeling unfulfilled comes from not allowing yourself to do the things that you want to do. Again, if you have a fear that this isn't going to work out, or people aren't going to accept you, or people are going to think I'm so weird for choosing this hobby or something like that, or whatever, you're going to constantly feel unfulfilled because you're not doing the things that truly light you up. That goes to the same beat of being inauthentic. Like, you're not going to feel authentic when you're hanging around certain people, because instead of saying what you want to say or having the boundaries, right? Boundaries work here too, of not divulging information that you want to divulge, and having those strong internal boundaries of like, this is who I am and I don't feel like talking about that. You're going to feel inauthentic when you're not able to uphold those boundaries for yourself. And when you feel like no one gets you, it's because you're not even giving people the opportunity to know the real you. That might be like a hard pill to swallow, but that's on you. All of this is always on us. And so the only way to really be able to heal this wound and have a higher amount of awareness and consciousness as we move through life and our business is really taking personal responsibility for everything. So example for life is, for myself personally, was I abandoned myself so many times in order to be accepted. So I abandoned myself in previous relationships where I accepted verbal and emotional abuse because I thought that was the best I was going to get. I abandoned myself with friends. I mean, like, let's take ourselves back to high school. Who had a terrible high school experience? Me, I'm raising my hand. I constantly abandoned myself and tried to mold and make myself into a chameleon with the people that I was hanging around with so I could be accepted. And when you abandon yourself like over and over and over again, you might now, be at this place where you're like, oh my God, I'm such a people pleaser. I have no boundaries and I'm like very codependent. How do I stop? Like, how do I grow from here? First and foremost, like, I love you. You're not broken. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And this is something that happens to many of us. And it's happened to me. I teach what I need all the time. So I had finally found myself at this place. I forget how old I was, but I just was like, you know what? Like, I've abandoned myself. Oh, you know what? It was actually, I think it was training for my first show, because I had abandoned myself so many times in the past for other people, that training for a competition was the first time I was saying yes to myself. So I was like, no, sorry, I cannot come with you. I have to go to sleep because I'm getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go train. I mean, very extreme example of choosing yourself, but there's many ways that we can choose ourselves to overcome this fear of not being accepted. So let's talk about healing. Before we go into healing though, if you do have your notes, like write down like an example for yourself of how not the fear of not being accepted shows up in your life, so that when I take you through the 3-step process, you can have something to kind of look back on. So healing, how do we heal this? Healing, like I've said a million times, is always a journey. There's never an end destination. It's a constant state of being like choosing to be aware and choosing to be conscious to what's kind of happening in your life. One of the tools in which we can heal this core wound, this fear, is unlearning. So, unlearning is the process through which we break down the origins of our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, feelings, biases. So, like I had said in the intro, this was a conditioning. Like, I wasn't born with the thought that I have to make everyone like me, right? I was not born with it. It came through an experience of a teacher telling me, not everyone is going to like you. And I was probably very stubborn at 6 years old, which is why I was like, oh, I got to make them like me. I got to do everything in my power to make them like me. I can't not have someone like me. I am kind of stubborn now that I think about it. So this is a belief. This is an experience. It's a bias. It's not a true thought. So when we go through the process of unlearning, what we do is we self-evaluate. I'm going to take you through a couple of questions. One more self-evaluating. I want you to put yourself in the energy of a curiosity. Just being curious, like, I wonder why. Not judging yourself for this belief, not judging yourself for feeling this way, not becoming critical or negative of yourself and like you need to fix yourself. Like, we're not here to fix, we're just here to heal. So I'm going to take you through a couple questions. When we're doing this self-evaluation, take what you like. It's like an opportunity to just take what you like and then let the rest go. And then it's also an opportunity to strip away all that you think you should be in order to make room for who you really are and for what is. So, a couple questions here. One, where did these beliefs come from? Or where did this belief come from? Does this belief support my mental, emotional, or physical health? Is this in alignment with the life I want? Is this congruent with my authenticity and the person I am, the person I want to become? Do I believe this to be true to myself? I also have this as a post in Instagram, and I can link that down in the show notes for you guys so you can go and save it. And what we're going to do is you're going to take that thought. So for all of us here, it's this, I'm this fear of not being accepted, and kind of thinking about maybe a memory that goes along with that, and taking yourself through these questions to unlearn. This is a process of healing. This is not fast. And a lot of times, maybe the first time, you might not have the answers to the questions, or it might still feel too painful for you. And that's okay. It's going to take time. So a lot of times when my clients are going through a like healing process, the way that I like to think about it is a snake shedding its skin. Like, layer by layer you shed, and maybe the first time it's like a really small layer. I don't know if you guys have ever had a pet snake before. I have. And sometimes they shed just a little bit, and then sometimes they will shed like their whole entire body at once, and it looks so creepy because when you take it out of the cage, it like literally you could like literally looks like a snake. It's the weirdest thing. We had pet snakes when I was a kid. I always had pythons. I would like go and take them for a walk. Fun fact about me. So think about it as shedding. Sometimes we shed just a little bit, and then sometimes we can shed our whole entire being at once. So there is no right way. There is no common way. It's all just based on who you are, what you're going through, how ingrained these beliefs are. A lot of times it's going to take a while, and you might need to supplement with breath work, Reiki, which is energy healing, and body work to help your body work this trauma out of you, because our body remembers and our body holds trauma. So if it's a very deep wound, if it's like very ingrained and you feel as if it's like this is who you are, and there's no fixing it, then your healing process is going to take a little bit longer. But we also need to address that mindset, because resentment is always going to be the biggest block to your healing. Resentment. So if you find yourself feeling resentment for something that happened that is causing you to have this fear of not being accepted, we got to heal that first too. So finding yourself in a place where you can be of forgiving and curiosity and love and compassion, that's gonna, I mean, I hate to say this, but it will quicken your healing process, versus like allowing yourself to stay in resentment. So that was just a side note. The 3 steps. Ready? I'm going to take you through 3 steps to overcome this specific fear of not being accepted and showing up as your authentic self. Number 1 is, first, we're going to do a thought model. What are the current subconscious thoughts that are driving my results? If you don't know what a thought model is, go back and listen to previous episodes. Maybe I'll do like a specific one on it, but it is the coaching process that I take all my clients through. We have our circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. So go ahead and do a thought model and figure out what is a subconscious belief that's driving your current results. Okay, fill it in. Step number 2, create a new conscious thought model. What are the new thoughts and feelings I get to embody? So the circumstance is the same. So let's do a thought model on my, on the podcast. So the circumstance of the podcast, the unconscious thought model that I was thinking that was not serving me was, what if no one likes the podcast? That made me feel insecure. Feelings trigger actions. The action or inaction was not recording. And then the result of not recording was I didn't have a podcast. So that actually did confirm my result, or confirm my thought of what if no one likes it? Well, the result was I had no podcast, so no one could not like it. You see how that works? Step number 2 is creating a new conscious thought model. And sometimes I like to work backwards. So I'll often ask my clients, what do you want to have, feel, or do instead? So in the case of my podcast, I wanted to have a podcast. And so that's my result. And the circumstance stays the same, because our thoughts are always creating our experience. It's not the circumstances itself. So the circumstance is the same. Now I can work backwards. The result I wanted was to have a podcast. What would the action be? To sit down and record. Okay. What is the feeling that I need to feel in order to be able to trigger this action? Well, I have to feel confident. I also have to feel like I can, determined, willing. And then, so you might have a couple feelings. Pick the one that works the best. So for me, that would be confident. I had to feel confident. Okay. What is the thought that I need to think about the podcast that is going to help me feel confident, that's going to give me the result of having the podcast? Old thought was, what if no one likes it? So new thought was, what was my new thought? I think for the new thought I had picked, now I'm having a brain fart. This is the part that's the hardest, just so you know. So if you're going through this and you're like, oh man, like what is my new thought? I'm also not writing anything down. Please don't do this in your head. You have to do this on paper. All the problems are in your head. So it's going to be extremely hard for you to like figure out what are the thoughts and what are the feelings and what are the actions and what are the results if you just try and do it in your brain. So don't do what I'm doing. So new thought could be something like, I feel empowered to, I know what it was. My purpose is to help people, and I can do that with a podcast. That makes me feel confident. And so tip on your new conscious thought model, if that thought is not producing that feeling, then that thought doesn't work. Like your thought has to produce the new feeling. That's what triggers a new thought model. That's what triggers manifestation, right? Visualization is being able to really embody that feeling. Step number 3, once you've made your new thought model, is you need community. You need accountability and you need community for a couple reasons. One is a place to be able to practice being your authentic self, a place where you can show up in your wholeness and be vulnerable and ask for support and also have accountability. I'm going to plug myself here. Come join Mindset Maker. This is what we do. If you don't have community, I mean, communities in a million places, right? You can go to like, I don't know, a church, you can go to a women's club, you can go to a gym, sports, you can find community in a lot of places. But when you have community where you feel accepted, it's much more easier for you to put your new thought models into practice and to practice showing up as your full and whole authentic self. If you don't have community, you're extremely by yourself and you're having a really hard time with your self growth, community is what you need. And you don't have to do this by yourself, and you're not meant to do this by yourself. So you can come and join my community. It's called Mindset Makeover. I talked about in the very beginning. All the details are down in the show notes. So those are the 3 steps. I am going to recap real quick and also just add, you have the potential to become like whatever it is that you want. And I think that a lot of times, I know that you have the potential to do more. And the fear that holds you back is that you don't think you are good enough. And the fear that drives that is the fear of not being accepted. So this is like a wound within a wound within a wound. It's like inception for self-growth. And so I really just want to first acknowledge you for listening to this podcast and for being here and for like wanting to overcome this fear of not being accepted. I want you to know that because you are here listening, that says volumes about who you are. Okay. And now to recap, when we are able to identify these feelings, identify these thoughts, and then unlearn, really challenge our thoughts and be like, is this thought true? Is this thought serving me? Is this thought something that really truly is going to get me to where I want to go? And most often that answer is no. Then you have to have the courage to be able to put in new thoughts, have the courage to show up as your authentic self. Like, make the choice, because it's a choice. It's a choice to be a people pleaser. It's a choice to be codependent, and it's a choice to not have boundaries. You are not a victim to your life. You have control. You have willpower. It's a matter of making the decision and making the choice to do this for yourself. I know it's hard. I've been there. I've done that. But it is not impossible. It is possible for you. So I hope this episode was helpful. I hope that it served you and that you are able to take what you learned today and put it into action, going through the 3 steps, doing the new thought models, looking at your old thought models, and then finding a community where you can take your new A-line, like the new action point inside the thought model, and put it into action. That's the only way that you're going to get the results you really want in life, is by actually doing the work. And if you want that work to be sustainable, we need to have the mindset and the beliefs behind it reinforcing us every single step of the way. Otherwise, we burn out in like a day. You just like have you ever thought, why did my motivation leave? Like, that's because you don't have the belief and the mindsets that are reinforcing it every step of the way. So I love you guys. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the week. If this episode was helpful, if you learned anything, if you resonated with it, hit me up on Instagram, take a screenshot, post it to your stories, and share. It helps me out so much when you guys share this podcast, and we grow the community together. And I also love, love, love hearing your own takeaways. So don't be shy to send me a message. Okay. I love you guys. I'll see you guys here next week. Same time, same place. Don't forget to be your highest self. Bye for now.